Yesterday, because of the great conversations and the timing, we wanted to kind of to ask Dominic if he would give us a 10 or 15 minute look at the Scalabrinians. Keep them getting smaller and smaller. Because we have to get the authors up here. But I do want to say that if you get to read the chapter that's on our blog on the Scalabrinians that Dominic put on, it is a very concise, beautiful chapter, really, of his own book that kind of gives the Scalabrinians. So this is a little bit, if I understand it, this is kind of a summary and lifting from that. Okay. Without further ado, then, Dominic.
Yeah, my slides are a little bit gimbal, but yeah, we have a little bit of, yeah, I've got thanks for getting up this early this morning, and it's my pleasure to talk to you about the Scalabrinians, the order of priests who I think were the most important aspect of Italian Catholicism in Chicago and many other cities in the country. And of course it all goes back to Bishop Scalabrini in Italy. And when I give people tours of the Italian Cultural Center, I always say that he's the first one who figured it out, all of these immigrants leaving Italy in fantastic numbers and no priests going with them. Well, he got that, decided, hey, this is a problem and it has to be solved. And so he did, in the 1880s, he formed his Fathers of St. Charles, and he went forward with the Scalabrini order. And even today, in their original focus was on having was on Italian immigrants. And ultimately, though, if you fast forward 100 years, they have switched gears to immigrants everywhere. And so there are still about 500 Scalabrinians doing work in dozens and dozens of countries, and strong in Australia, Latin America, Canada, the United States, etc., etc. So, and there is a move that you might know of to make him a saint, and he was beatified in the late 1990s, and I think they're looking for some extra miracles. Well, we could probably offer Chicago as one of the miracles if you think about what Italian Catholics were like in the 1880s that Father Morini talked about. Why look at the Chicago Italian Catholics today, and yeah, there has been a miracle. So let's credit it to Bishop Scalabrini. Let's see what I have here. The sources that I have are many. I like to go through parish anniversary books, and there is a summary anniversary book, the 75th anniversary of the Western Province, a Reg's book that takes every activity of the Scalabrinians and summarizes it. And then a long time ago, I had a Fulbright in Italy, and I could hardly understand Italian, and I could not at all understand Italian handwriting. So based on that precise research, I was able to go through a lot of the letters of the early Scalabrinians, and they're filled with despair. There were northern Italians from Piacenza sent to work with Sicilians and Southerners, etc., and they wrote back letters. What am I going to do? Each day is more difficult than the last? Is this ever going to end? Did I make a mistake in coming here? And all these things when they're writing back to their superiors. There's a plethora of biographies of Scalabrini. I have to admit, I haven't read them all, especially the ones in Italian, but his life is well documented, his thoughts are well documented, and Tina DeRosa wrote on contract a biography of Bishop Scalabrini at the behest of Father Lawrence Cozy in the, must have been 1980s. We have it, the Casa Italia, a lot of material about the 1990s beatification. The Fra Noi covered, this is the Italian newspaper that, and I'm getting ahead of the story, that the Scalabrinians established. And there's a lot of material there. And keyword searches of the Tribune, a lot of interviews have been done with Father Fidini, who was perhaps the biggest thing. And then I did an article in the 1990s about the Scalabrinians, and Father Fidini is in one of my oral history books. This is a picture of the 75th anniversary, Humilitas, Italian neighborhoods and churches. I won't go through all the list of the neighborhoods, but there are about a dozen Italian neighborhoods. There was no just one Little Italy as in Chicago, as we know. For each of the major Italian neighborhoods, except for Chicago Heights for some reason, the Scalabrinians decided to establish a church, beginning in 1903, when they got an agreement with the Archdiocese the Archdiocese said you could have the Italians. And so the Scalabrinians came in and did their thing. And within 10, 15 years, they had a dozen functioning parishes. And they, they did all the things that parishes do. The only thing they could be faulted for, and they were faulted for by the Archdiocese, you're not getting the schools built fast enough. You're not opening schools fast enough. But they were, and you go through the records, and they list the number of first communions, the number of confirmations, the number of funerals, weddings. It was like, say, the Mexican-American population today. Young, vibrant people moving forward, getting married, having children, etc., etc. Maybe having fewer deaths than they might have later in life. So it was a very vibrant situation, and it was successful. Then, if you want to read my book, this is a part of a page from the book. That one didn't come out. An aspect in the 1920s, the Scalabrinians, like a lot of other Catholics in the country, celebrated the alliance or the concordat with Mussolini. And there was, for at least a dozen years, from 1929 to the start of World War II, there was a strong alliance between the Italian government of Mussolini and the parish priests, the Scalabrini priests, and I might extend that to other Catholics in the country. Mussolini was very successful in combining the nationalism that he preached with the Catholicism that was being preached, and they mutually reinforced themselves during the 1930s. One of the leading lights, Father Frank doesn't seem to be happy in this picture, but he was a project of the Scalabrinians. They felt so successful by the 1930s that they decided to found a seminary. What better idea can you have than to take the the boys, the young men in the Italian-American community and make them into priests? serve the Italian-American community. And so in the early 1930s, and other of the Scalabrinians spearheaded the effort to create the Sacred Heart Seminary. It started off at Santa Maria Addolorata. This is an early picture of the group of priests who were working on this project. And eventually, though, ground was broken in Melrose Park, which is now Stone Park, but anyway, I won't go into that. And there was a very big celebration, papal nuncios and all that sort of thing came to start the groundbreaking, and by the mid-1930s, it was functioning with these bright young folks. I would point out, well, they're washed up, but Father Pedini there became the single most accomplished Scalabrinian. He was very effective in his work with the seminary first. After that, in the 1940s, late 40s, he got the idea to create an old people's home, and then the Villa Scalabrini became the biggest thing in the Italian community, uniting the community even after the neighborhoods had faded. And then also he was to promote the Villa Scalabrini. He established the newspaper Fra Noi, which again is a kind of mirror to the community. And here are some scenes from the seminary out in Stone Park, which is now the Casa Italia. One of the key aspects of this seminary, and I suppose others, is the support of the parents of the seminarians. And another thing that they put together was to keep attracting folks there was the Holy Stairs. I haven't done the Holy Stairs, but if you do a rosary on each one, and the thing kept going in the early 1950s, early 60s. This addition was created to the seminary, and the seminary has, even though the Scalabrinians ultimately left after the change in the church of the 1960s, the property, the physical investment that was put into it is still serving the Italian community. We're teaching Italian language, and showing films, and a lot of people get to eat there, and the whole bit. But there were some challenges to the Scalabrinians, one from the Protestants on the right-hand side. One from my favorite person is Padre Celeste. Padre Celeste was a renegade priest in the 1920s, early 1930s. And here, you can't see it very well, but he's seated there dressed like the Pope, and he's got a barber chair in the foreground. He was a former barber, and seated in the foreground, you can't see it very well, is like a 12-year-old girl. She is the Virgin Mary, according to their. He had quite a following, and they had enough money to print slick booklets, etc. And he got advertising from the community. He was eventually arrested for child molesting or something, but the church had to contend with that kind of competition. And then La Parola del Popolo is the socialist newspaper that existed in Chicago. It was very strong in Chicago. And as may have been mentioned, Chicago Italians were among the most socialist of the ethnic groups. And the priests, especially the ones at St. Michael's on the near southwest side, 24th and Oakley, had to contend with overt anti-clericalism. And so all these things had to be overcome. And then the question of, this is Roseland. Roseland built a brand new church like a basilica in about 1960. But very soon after that, the neighborhood began to change, and there was blockbusting, etc. And so the Scalabrinians had to contend with a neighborhood change. And one of the things, the gears that they shifted, especially in Roseland, is that that parish became Hispanic. And the same thing happened with Santa Maria de Lorata. With some segments of the Italians still coming back, the Scalabrinians were smart enough to learn Spanish, and they took care of it. This evocation of Father Pidini and the Villa Scalabrini, which for the 50 years was the charity of the Italian-American community. Everybody, Father Pidini was a really great diplomat. He was able to create ties with every entity in the community, and they all paid tribute to one degree or another to support Villa Scalabrini. And unfortunately, they didn't get, the deed was in the hands of the bishop, and so when troubled times came in the 90s, the Scalabrinians lost it. But there was also a lack of interest on part of the Scalabrinians. So it was a combination of a lot of different things that lost the Villa Scalabrini. One thing that wasn't, I'll just mention Our Lady of the Angels. It didn't have any, it wasn't a Scalabrini parish, but it was an important event that took place in the Italian-American Catholic community. And so this is the first Franoi, and this is the last Franoi. The contemporary presence of the Scalabrinians in Chicago, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, La Dorata, St. Anthony, a lot of Hispanic service to the Hispanic community. Radio Maria and the Casa Italia. And you can read that yourself. A century of Scalabrini work has brought IAs into the mainstream, retained Catholicism, and provided institutional space and support for Italian cultural retention